be, because she's been kicked out. She should be back shortly. I'm just going to do some quick housekeeping with you, and then by that stage, she should be back in. Apologies for those of you who have heard this 13 times, but for one last time this year. Could we ask, please, that you keep yourselves on mute unless you are speaking. As we're recording the session, it just makes the sound quality better. If you do forget, we will put you onto mute if there is any background noise. Also, if you need to get up during the meeting, can you just make sure you turn your camera off, because it can be quite distracting if people are moving around a lot. We're going to, Jay is going to be doing the introduction to the meeting, so I'll hand over to her in a second. As I said, we are recording the session, so if you would not like to appear on the recording, can you please turn your camera off? And if we're using the chat facility for any questions, observations, anything you want to say during the meeting, you can either speak to everyone or you can message people individually. If you have anything you want to ask any of the team here at Business West, you can just private message us. Or if you're having any technical issues, you can private message us. I think that's it. I will now hand over to Jaya to get started. Thank you.
Thank you, Natasha. Hopefully you can all hear me. Welcome. As Natasha said, I'm Jaya Chakrabarti. I am Vice President of the Bristol Chamber of Commerce and Initiative. I'm stepping in for President Richard Bonner, who sends his apologies, but will be lurking later on, we hope, so you might even catch him then. So I don't know if it's just me, but I've been given the responsibility for introducing the 13th and final initiative meeting of 2020. Which has definitely been a year of both colossal hindsight, but also, I hope, the call to arms for responsible businesses and organizations everywhere to play their part, because we've got to do things better. And I'm pleased to say I'm proud to have been part of the initiative over this year, especially seeing the work that we've been doing in such important areas, addressing COVID and Brexit and climate change, and also looking at longer term things like air quality and tackling disadvantage, which we need to have had our eye on, and we are continuing to do in spite of the crisis we are in. A significant part that I'm playing at the moment is also in relation to equality, diversity and inclusion. I don't know how you feel about the toppling of the Colston statue, but I do know that as a result of everything that has been triggered in the Black Lives Matter protests, we can't deny that all eyes from across the world have been on our city region. And I really want leadership on how we address those issues and inequalities that have surfaced from the depths of those harbours to be remembered, not just those symbols of injustice. Pleased to say that Business West and the initiative are addressing both of these issues very well. We have new representatives coming onto our boards with stronger voices. We are also working and supporting the work of Mohammed Sadiq with Wessex Water, who are building a better Bristol board and CIC, committing to addressing those inequalities. We even have humongous organisations involved, including Hargreaves Lansdowne, Yo Valley, and we're integrating our work with the wider One City agenda, so that we're not leaving anyone behind. Across the wider Business West, I know that there's a lot of activity and support in business export, including Tech for Good, that my own organisation is involved with. Innovation, also strong links with Innovate UK, Skills with Business West as a Kickstart intermediary, and Partners of the Workers' Skills for the Future programme. Change is happening very fast. From the outset of the virus back in March, the initiative has pivoted, thankfully, to support our communities and us, to take a lead on how we recover and renew. So this meeting today is jam-packed with hope for the future, I think, as we start this festive season. So we will be giving you updates. We have our Bristol Mayor, Marvin, Rees. We have the Group CEO of the Prince's Trust, Dame Martina Milburn, joining us too. So tight schedule. Questions at the end, please. If you hear a fire alarm, it's yours. You should get the hell out. And hopefully, if you stick with us, there will be an opportunity to network. So on that, I will hand over to James Jury for a roundup of 2020.
Thank you, Jaya. Excellent. And very good morning to everybody. Excellent to see so many faces. I think we've got about 125, 126 members and invited guests. We've got some new contacts from our initiative members, I think some prospective members, which is great to have on, and I hope you all will continue to sorry, I've had my screen moving around, to get more involved with us. And we have I've got a number of slides I want to talk through just for a few minutes before we get into the rest of our agenda. As Jay has referred to, we've got a packed session for you today as we come to the end of the year, but look ahead, and I think with some positiveness and some hope, even though there is a lot of significant challenge and lots of agendas. Particular welcome to our new initiative members. I'm not sure if everybody from these members are on the call today, but Alistair Curry from Alistair Curry Events, who's also got other businesses within our city, the Caravan and Motorhome Club, who we've been working with to make sure that they retain their base in the city, and also to TechSpark, who play such an important role for our technology community. You're very welcome on board, and I'm pleased to say the initiative is in good shape at a time of where we've been all having to work harder to make sure that we sustain ourselves, and very pleased and thank you all for continuing to support who we are and what we do, because if we are able to do that, we're able to help you. If we can move to the next slide then, please, Mark. So we've been busy across the whole of the year in, I think, both as the initiative, but also as through the Business West organisation. And some of these figures give you a sense of the scale of the activity that we have worked on. Sorry, I've made a error here with the slide. Sorry. So we have over 100,000 businesses we've touched in one way, shape or form across our platform, particularly through trading through coronavirus, but also through some of the other programs of support. And I won't read all the statistics out, but I think we have worked really hard together with our colleagues in our local authorities, our combined authority, to try and get, for instance, some of the money into the hands of the right businesses who do need that support. I know there's never been enough support really for some of the scale, and we are seeing that, I'm afraid, firsthand. But actually we have helped to make sure that some of those businesses, for instance, that don't directly pay business rates, actually are able to access grants earlier in the year. We've been listening to you, and we would encourage you to please continue to fill in the surveys that we put around through our quarterly economic survey. It's absolute gold dust for us to both make sure we're able to represent you, but also feed that back in through British Chambers into central government. And we have made some real changes off the back of some of the information, the evidence. We've got many of you onto things like Points West in through our media, and we've been lobbying specifically. So that's absolute gold dust for us. And also, please continue to ask us questions as we move clearly through, let's hope, through towards, I think, the final straight of probably through this coronavirus. It may be quite a long straight, but actually also we have got the agenda around Brexit, and we want to listen. We need to listen to you. And thank you, I think, to so many of the businesses and our initiative members who've been able to provide fantastic content, which we've then been able to, businesses helping businesses in lots of different ways. Can we move to the next slide, please, Mark? So we've had a series of areas where we have been focusing our energy and effort, and many of you have been heavily involved with some of this work, and I certainly wouldn't be able to do it justice in just a few moments, other than to touch on some of the headlines. So at a Bristol level, but also at the combined authority level and at a local authority level across all four of our local authorities in Bath, North Somerset, South Gloucestershire, we've been playing an active part in helping to, I think, shape and engage in coming up with the future plans about how we are going to renew and recover. We know things are not going to go back to as they were, but there is a need for us ultimately to recover post-COVID in a better way, particularly putting, I think, the opportunities that we have probably more than many other places in this country, the opportunity to, I think, tackle head on, as Jay has been saying, inclusion, then our need for us to decarbonise our economy and our cities region. We have and we continue to work with, particularly in Bristol, around the proposals for a clean air zone. We've had run sessions in recent weeks, and we'll be looking at the October a deadline of next year to make sure that we think there's strong workability. We need clean air, but also we need measures which are, I think, businesses able to adjust to, and we do get some of the benefits environmentally, economically, out of the opportunities to have some sort of measures around the clean air zone. I've talked about clean inclusive growth, and that's a theme we're going to keep coming back to with, both as Business West, as the Chamber and the initiative. We have got, watch this space really for some of the work that we are bringing forward for next year, how we want to unleash, I think, support to help businesses to decarbonize, to talk more. It's something we've done over many years with lots of you. We're members of the Green Capital Partnership in the city, for instance, but there are lots of different ways we need to accelerate that, as the UN Secretary General was telling us. Diversity and inclusion, as Jaya has touched on, is a central part of our agenda, and of course about placemaking, and I think about projecting the brand and the opportunities of this Bristol, Bath, West of England area. Can we move to the next slide, please, Mark? So I think just to touch on some of the initiatives that have been going on the ground. These are quite Bristol specific through the partnership activity that we are centrally part of, through the likes of Destination Bristol, the business improvement districts, which they run. We've been able, I think, as a city region, to come together, and I've seen from March onwards really an incredible way that I think organisations have worked together. The one city approach, I think, in some ways is just shorthand, but the opportunity for the councils, the universities, the trade unions, the health bodies, the police service, the business community to pull together and to support each other at a time of real challenge to everybody, but also start to move on things that, how do we enable businesses and organisations to start to function and give people reasons for optimism and confidence. And things like the Hearts campaign, part of the Bristol Together campaign, actually went globally for our city, projecting our city. And you may know the project campaign, which has just kicked off through Advent, which run through to of course the 24th, projecting onto our some of our brilliant organisations and buildings in our city. And also, of course, more recently, we've just been running the Festival of Ideas. Part of us as a city, we are a thinking place. We are a place which is looking at the challenges of today and tomorrow, not just for local consumption, but for global consumption. And that Festival of Economics, I know, was hugely successful. Can we move to the next slide, please? So we have 4 themes that we've been talking to you and listening to you as members. Victoria and I have been talking to many of you one-to-one, but also through some of our roundtable sessions and through some of the specific other work that we're doing around the city region. And we focus our energy and efforts around these, and we've got activity which drops out of this, which is, some of it is led by some of our members. I think climate change is many ways as an issue on its own right, but also an issue which cuts across everything that we're doing. And is only going to become more and more important, and mobility and connectivity, digital connectivity is a central part of that, as of course is education skills, supporting our young people and those with disadvantage, and we're going to be talking more about that through this meeting. Can we move to the next slide, please, Mark? I think this is pretty much my final slide. So just looking ahead to next year, there's some big things that we are focusing our energy and effort on. Clearly, we know any day we may have a deal or we may not have a deal, but we've set out a platform as Business West to support particularly businesses who are trying to trade into the European markets, around making sure that they are able to do that, and working with our growth hubs and our local authorities to appropriately support that. I mentioned the Clean Air Zone. We've clearly got a programme of meetings and roundtables we're going to be talking to you about, and some of you we want to play a part with, help to run those. In May, we have the elections, both for a Bristol mayor and also for our combined authority mayor, and of course the police and crime commissioner. We have a massive agenda happening in the UK in November with COP26. There's a ballot for a new business improvement district for Redcliffe and Temple, part of the Destination Bristol work. Western Gateway is an agenda which we believe has continued to become more important for this area as a stage way for us to project. There's a Freeport bid which is currently running, and that the opportunity for our area to potentially secure a Freeport bid is now being led by the Combined Authority. And then lastly, and I'm going to bring in briefly a colleague in a moment, we have a significant stake within the visitor economy, and we know that that's something which has been hugely challenged through this year. One of the big announcements in this last week has been Bristol Zoo, our biggest visitor attraction in Bristol, has made a big announcement. I wanted to bring in Justin Morris just for one moment, just to explain just very briefly, if he's able to, that they have made this decision to move to close the Clifton site and some of the background to that towards the future. So Justin, can I come across to you, please?
Thank you, James. Hope everyone can hear me. Good morning, everyone. I'm sure you're all aware of the announcement that we made last week, specifically our plans to move Bristol Zoo from the Clifton site to our sister site at Wild Place. And I'm very grateful to many of you for your public statements of support in terms of that future strategy. I think we've been very clear as we've announced those plans that although COVID has clearly had a significant impact on our organisation, as it has for every organisation, actually the reasons for that future strategy are born out of some fairly long-standing challenges at the Bristol Zoo Garden site. And the good news is that we have got a really exciting way forward, not just for our organisation, but for Bristol and for the west of England. We're going to be creating a world-class zoo that will be a national destination, and that's going to be good for the visitor economy of the region, which James referred to, but it's also going to be good for skills and education and research. A growing and important part of our conservation charity is the work that we now do with our HE and FE partners in particular. And of course, it's going to be good for conservation, and the climate and ecological emergencies are front and centre in our new strategy for the long term, both in terms of the visitor experience, but also the work that we're doing here in the region and around the world in terms of field conservation. So we're going to be developing those plans in more detail next year, and we're obviously very excited about what's coming next and looking forward to continuing the conversation with all of our stakeholders, many of whom are part of the initiative. And just wanted to say thank you to everyone again for all of your support.
Thank you, Justin. I'm sure if colleagues have got questions, I know you can only stay with us for a few moments, but if people post some questions or even drop them through, we can help to pass them on if that's helpful.
Thank you.
Or some if they're keen to just engage with you. But thank you very much. I think it's such a big decision for our city. I was keen to give you just a few moments there. So can I just lastly then just to finish up say thank you all very much for all your interest and support. I wish I had more time to talk about some of the other things that are going on, because there is amazing activity this year. Has been incredible, not just all positively, but certainly a lot of negative. But actually, looking ahead, really looking forward to working with you all. And I'm keen to now move on to, if I could, Jay, if I briefly introduce Sally Hogg, who has been many of you will have heard from through this year. I've actually never met Sally, but I feel like I know her well because we've probably been on conversations twice a week through most of this year, and she's doing a cracking job with Christina Gray and the team in public health. So going to give us a little update on where things are with the virus and looking ahead over the next period. Sally, across.
Thank you, James, and hello, everybody. Apologise now for those of you that have already heard a similar story to this week, because I have said it a few times. So you could have this moment, just have a little bit of time off. So in terms of COVID, we have quite a lot of positive news this week, but COVID is still very much part of the world that we're living in. And although we've got really exciting news about vaccine, it's not going to go away yet, I'm afraid. So our cases since March have been 15,236. In the last 7 days, 859, and the previous week to that was 1,651. And before that, it was around 2,000. So you can see that during lockdown, we've had that lovely downward slope, which is making us all feel very, very good. So still an average number a day of about 123. Our rate per 100,000, and I know that you've heard me say many times that we measure in 100,000 so that we can compare like with like, is 185.4. At our highest point, we were well over 500 per 100,000. But in September, we went down to 20 per 100,000. So you can see this week, we've still got much work to do. And just to give you a comparison, and for those of you that are around the region, North Somerset is 172, South Gloss is 165, Baines is 85, and the England average is 158. And then at the other end of the scale, we've got Medway at 520, Stoke-on-Trent at 364, and Slough at 305. Across the population, cases have evened out. So if you remember, in the early days of the second wave, we had huge numbers of younger people, many of whom were asymptomatic. Now that has spread across our population with the greatest numbers between 30 and 49. But our concern is that it is going up in older people, which was what we were worried about initially. So that has happened. So as we move from lockdown into our new position of tier 3, we've really got to be careful so that we do reach Christmas in a better place than we would have been without the tier restrictions. As I said, there are some positives this week. Vaccine is ready to go. It should be online by next week for healthcare staff, people working round the clock nationally to get that up and running. This vaccine has to be stored in very cold temperatures, so it's not suitable for everybody everywhere, but it's definitely going to be ready for healthcare staff imminently. And our plan in Bristol is to drive the base rate of COVID as low as we possibly can now. So we're increasing our number of marshals. We've got some enforcement where necessary, and I must say it's rare, but we need to have that in place. We've got really good mobilised engagement and contact cells in areas of the city where there's a high rate of infection, and in some of our areas where there's high BAME, for example, where communication is more difficult. Our local engagement board is meeting twice a week at the moment, and we're setting up geographical task groups as well. We're setting up targeted lateral flow testing, which is really efficient at picking up asymptomatic cases. So about 1 in 3 people have no symptoms of COVID at all. So this is really important. And as we're tier 3, we've put in an expression of interest for community testing. This comes from the government. It's not our choice. We say that we would appreciate it, and we wait for an answer, and we don't have that answer as far as I know yet. So rapid testing picks up about 80% of asymptomatic cases, and it is a really useful tool for us in managing this highly infectious communicable disease. Different groups of the city have different government programs going on. So our universities have both got testing this week that started on Monday before students leave Bristol and go home for the holidays. So that with the aim that they're not moving COVID from one place to another. Care homes have similar for different reasons, and our hospitals do too. So how can you help? By obeying the rules. I'm really sorry to be an old misery here, but it is a fact, I'm afraid. So no mixing indoors for anybody. And following the Christmas rules, please. I was talking to somebody yesterday that said, oh, we've got 13 or 14 of us on Boxing Day. And I just sort of took a slight deep breath. It's really hard, this, for all of us, myself included. I've got 3 children with lots of grandchildren, so we won't all be together. We will expect this Christmas legacy to produce some sort of third wave in January. Let's hope it's small and that we can contain it really quickly. And then just why? Why? Because we spend more time indoors in the winter. Coronavirus can live indoors for more than 24 hours, and it lives on surfaces, and we can pick it up by touching a contaminated surface. We do need as much ventilation as we can. So during that Christmas period, you know, advise people to get outside for a walk if you possibly can. And we'll hope for no rain, I think. And that some ventilation in terms of windows and doors and that sort of thing. And just remembering hands, face, space, 2 meters apart really helps prevent droplet infection and that transmission. Isolation if you need to, and testing if you need to as well. And thank you very much from all of us in the public health team. You have been amazing this year. We really thank you. And we know that together we will beat this virus and we will stop the spread any more than absolutely necessary. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Sally, for that. I know it sounds crazy, but I do feel very reassured knowing all the measures that are being taken. And thank you for all your hard work and being so supportive of the work that we're doing with the initiative as well. So really appreciate your input. We are now moving on to Guy Orpen, who, as Deputy Vice Chancellor of Bristol University, has been working on the new campus development. He's been responsible for the development of the new Temple Quarter Enterprise Campus and lots of other venues at the university, but also he has been leading in the engagement of the university with civic partners and working so closely with us. This is Guy's last meeting with us. He will be very shortly retiring after 41 years with the University of Bristol. Clearly a lifer, obviously enjoyed it and has made a huge difference whilst working with us. Guy, can I hand over to you, please?
Thank you, Jo. Thanks for those kind words. Can I, before I say anything at all, echo your thanks to Sally Hogg and Christina Gray and all their public health colleagues across the region. They've done an exceptional job, as have the police and the initiative. So thank you to the initiative for the opportunity to talk today and not to talk anymore in this talk about COVID. So you can see a picture there of the new campus at the venue. Many of you will be familiar with where it is. It's just to the east of Temple Meads, Brunel's iconic station, but our great transport infrastructure. That side of Temple Meads has not been well served by the recent past, but we are busily trying to make it a better place for ourselves and for this city as a whole. You'll see there the design that has been fully now consented on March the 18th, just before lockdown 1.0, right in the heart of the enterprise zone and just to the east of Temple Meads. So if we go to the next slide, you'll see some of the rationale for why we're working in that venue. So our intent is to create a major contribution to the city, but also to the university to achieve a major investment and secure the future of the university through contributing to its academic, financial and environmental sustainability for decades ahead. It will provide accommodation, of course, for our teaching and research and innovation activities for about 3,000 students, about 600 or so university staff, and about 300 or 400 business and community partners in the buildings with us, working alongside us, sharing in the journey around all the teaching, research and innovation. There's also student accommodation in those taller buildings to the left of the diagram we've just moved on from. And the whole design is intended to be the most sustainable element of our estate. Our hope is therefore that this is a landmark development for the city and the future and the university both. And in setting it up, we're working very closely with our partners at the City Council, the Combined Authority, Network Rail, Homes England, the Environment Agency and others to create a place that is of long and enduring value to the city and its communities. in essence, it takes the city centre to the east of Bristol, coupling with the proposed eastern entrance to Temple Meads station. It will be a major contributor and potentially a pivotal part of the economic growth to come, and indeed a big contributor to societal recovery and rebuilding that we now need so badly. On the next slide, you'll see something of the activity that we're proposing to host in Temple Quarter. The objective is to create opportunities for our teachers and educators, researchers and students to benefit from partnership. So the venue then is intended to complement others that we have in Clifton and the Science Park and elsewhere, because it is in an urban setting, a city centre setting of Temple Quarter. In the first instance, our key academic units that will go there are our rather small but wonderful Centre for Innovation and Entrepreneurship, our rapidly growing School of Management, which in some of our documents is termed the Business School of the Future, and a big chunk of our digital and quantum engineering capabilities from our exceptional engineering community that is best suited to that venue rather than the others that we have available. On the next slide, you'll see something of the validation for that proposition. So there's numbers here which are lovely and very big, and indeed bigger than we've ever achieved in terms of investments in the activity as proposed. But I think the important thing is the validation, that the sense that we can contribute to framing and working with external partners to develop the futures, for our digital futures together, not simply waiting for them to arrive with us, donated by benevolent or less benevolent innovators in California or elsewhere, but thinking about what Bristol thinks about the digital future should be. So that has been very generously supported both by central government and by industry partners. And local government in the form of the West of England Combined Authority has been extremely generous in supporting the Quantum Technology Innovation Centre, which with other allied disruptive technologies is a key feature of the future plans for Temple Quarter, again with big co-funding from industry. More recently, in the summer, it was announced that we had another major grant from Research England for a creative technologies push called My World, with many industry partners, again, large and small, far and wide. So the Netflixes of this world, as well as the Ardmans and local independents within the city, and of course the BBC. Our philanthropic friends have stepped up in unprecedented amounts as well. And the bottom line is something for university types, so that the top end of our student community, the PhD community, has received unprecedented levels of central government support for engineering and physical sciences. Just to brag for a second, the university won 10 of these centres in a national competition. That's about the same as Oxford and Cambridge put together, and certainly comfortably the biggest in the whole country. 3 of them will come to Temple Quarter because they're best suited there, the artificial intelligence and quantum engineering, for example. On the next slide, you'll see something of the nature of those industrial partners. Now, there are names here that you'll be very familiar with and are global brands, as it were, which is great. The public sector brands are also present and deeply committed. But I'd flag that the key thing on this slide is actually that BABASA, Black Southwest Network and No West Media Centre, are part of the community that have been gathered together to support these various initiatives. It's that mix of large and small, global and local, and the convening power of the university to bring these parties into dialogue that appears to be the most attractive element of the proposition that has achieved this major validation in the form of these big grants. Let me move on to the next slide, where we'll talk a bit about the activity underway today, because we're not waiting, as it were, for the construction to complete before getting underway. So the Digital Futures Institute, that community with many of those parties on the last slide, that pilot activity is underway as we speak. The Quantum Technology Innovation Centre, which offers laboratory facilities for quantum technology and other disruptive technologies, is again underway at the bottom of Park Street in Cathedral Square. Perhaps less obviously, we're moving off campus. The idea here is not to wait for communities to come and join in the facilities that we're creating in Temple Quarter campus, for those communities to have a voice in our research and education and to teach us things, but to go out off the campus to meet those communities where they live. So we've taken out rental space, leased space in the Wellspring Settlement's new extension at Barton Hill. 3 of these shipping containers in the picture there are now in our hands and are a venue for our work, but in particular for those communities to help us think through the opportunities that they want to see seized in the future. Of course, we're continuing to operate the engine shed and its Set Squared Centre, and more recently we've entered into formal partnerships with Unit DX, set up by the marvellous Harry Destacroix, who's marvellous not least because he's a University of Bristol graduate, as well as an extremely successful entrepreneur, and has created something really special for the life science community in Unit DX. And the Centres for Doctoral Training I referred to are up and operating. So I'll close the last couple of slides by showing you a different view of the campus. This looks from the south towards the campus with the postgraduate residences in the foreground and the major academic building in blue in the background. It is intended to make the point that the Temple Quarter campus is not an island unto itself. It will be open to and shared by communities, not least the 7 or 8 million that the Network Rail wish to walk through our campus to reach the new eastern entrance, which is absolutely in the middle of the picture as shown there. But more importantly, that our development will be a trigger for a whole host of other developments in the area. By my count, there's probably £2 billion of development waiting to come, the first chunk of which is from us. But then our friends and colleagues at Legal and General are looking to the south end of the Temple Island site there. And on to the right-hand side, we have the Silverthorne Lane development that Square Bay have conditional planning consent for, and a number of student residential developments which are immediately adjacent to the campus, all of which speak to a massive regeneration opportunity for the city, and one which we need to work together to deliver. We've had excellent dialogue and cooperation with some of that developer community, but also the development, the city council, and through One City, the wider sense of communities that we wish to create the venue for, a space, for public and enterprise use, an innovation district, you might call it, that is a jewel in the crown for the city, for the west of England and the Western Gateway, something which has global resonance, but local impact. If you go to the last slide, you'll see what we have consented design for and what it'll look like. If you stand in front of Motion and look across the floating harbour, that's what you'll be looking at on a sunny day a few years from now. I look forward to seeing you there, and thank you for all your support for the initiative and its member organisations have given this project, which has been very gratefully received. I look forward to working with you on it. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Guy. And actually, this has been a very positive report back that makes me feel really good about 2021. And Lord knows we all need it. The regeneration of our city through the partnerships that you've outlined and the development at the Enterprise Campus is going to be something that's going to be pretty huge for our city. And I also say again that you will be missed. Don't be a stranger, and please, whatever your next adventures are, keep in touch. So I will now move on and introduce Mohammed Ali, who is representing Babasa CIC, which is not only award-winning, but the Queen's Award-winning Bristol-based social enterprise organisation that is supporting young people. And Mohammed is one of their trailblazers, and we are so happy to have you here to talk about young people in our city in the context of the Bridge to Equality report, which I'm hoping Nina will be able to share on the chat shortly. Mohammed, over to you.
Thank you very much. And I would like to just say, first of all, apologies if you hear any background noise. Where I'm placed today is unfortunately by the road, so apologies for that. And yeah, thank you for welcoming me. And I'm the youth coordinator over at Babasa. And for those of you that are not familiar with Babasa, we are a social enterprise operating since 2013, founded by our CEO, Poku. And I'm a beneficiary myself, as Jay mentioned. I was actually, they supported me as far back as 7 years ago, and they've been supporting me ever since. And now I'm sort of working with them to sort of give back, and they've helped me on so many different levels. over the years, and thus a trailblazer. So a trailblazer is if you benefited from them and you graduated through their programs. So in terms of our mission in Babasa, it's simply to help empower young people from ethnically diverse and also less advantaged communities to move into work, education, or business. And now, as mentioned, and I believe it's just been put in on the chat here, with our Bridge to Quality report that we partnered up with Bristol University, actually, and as Vice Chancellor mentioned, we noticed that there was a number of problems that young people face, and I'll just sort of summarize a couple of points here, and that, you know, we held a number of consultations, 8 in total, with over 120 stakeholders and hundreds of young people to actually give their opinion on what their issues are and what they face. And the key findings are nearly 80% of inner city young people cite the main barriers to progression are a lack of information, experience and skills and networking. There is also an overall decline in mental health for young people. We have stepped up and adapted our research, our outreach and support during the lockdown, but there's still a lot of problems faced when it comes to their mental well-being. And also 80% of businesses want to improve diversity, but only 17% say they don't know how to, say they don't know how to recruit. So there's an issue with actually recruiting these young people. And they're saying that we need jobs, we need opportunities, and the employment side is something that is actually worrying a lot of young people in today. So what is it that we're doing? And we have our core programs. These are 3 separate youth programs that we have. There's the support program, which looks at for those young people that are more in need, that need more catered one-to-one support. We have the challenge program, which are for those that are more ambitious, which I went through myself, and they get involved in events and politics and help actually create something that are for the young people and by the young people. And finally, we have our placement program, which connects them into employers and hopefully bridge that gap. So now I did briefly talk about the Bridge to Quality report, but please do look into that. There's a lot more detail on there. And so I'll just like to sort of summarize, and in terms of the next steps, I guess. So you could support Babasa by accessing our diverse talent and recruitment, onboarding, and also letting your staff know to get in contact with us, and we'll be able to support in that regard. And finally, actually, just to mention some of the success that we have, and I'll end on that, is to date, we've supported over 2,500 young people, and we help about 300 ethnically diverse people every year, 70% of those being people of color, and 9% coming from no income. So those are some brief summary. I'll be around later on as well if you like to network. So thank you.
Thank you so much, Mohammed, for a really good overview, and also being one of those shining stars of our city that I'm proud to have met today. I really hope that we continue to hear a lot more about your work. And of course, Mohammed will be in afterwards if you want to catch him during networking. So thank you for that, Mohammed. I would like to now move on to introducing a man who needs no real introduction, our Mayor of Bristol, Marvin Rees. Not many mayors have been able to claim that they are leading their cities through pandemic. I think in terms of the work that's being done on the One City plan, in partnership with every single sector going, I think that we have, as a city, become as robust as we can be. So without too much hesitation, I will hand over to Marvin in order to give us a city region update. Marvin, over to you.
Thank you, Jay. I really appreciate that. And it's great to be on a call with you all. I was speaking on an event with Bristol University event with the School of Social Policy just the other day, and we were talking about leading through times of turmoil. And I think one of the things that's just during the course of that conversation I was reflecting on is that we can have policies and structures, and we need to do that. But one of the biggest sources of resilience actually is the soft relationships, just knowing there are people on the end of the phone, sharing a sense of vision, the kind of things we've heard about today, sustainable, inclusive economy, sharing a philosophy, and having some sense of shared values. And those unquantifiable qualities in our relationships do so much to keep us stitched together beyond structures and policy. We've got to have good structures and policies, right? But it's that stuff that really matters. And it's great to come off the back of Mohammed. I was actually just talking about Babasa. And if we talk about a linking ambition and that sense of purpose we have, I was over at CEG's new EQ development, which is over on the end of Temple Street, right next to the council building. It's the largest speculative office development in the country right now. And just talking about the importance of them getting on with stuff. It wasn't that brutal. It was the importance of us continuing to do stuff, drive, to show confidence, drive the economy, have stuff being built. And they were reminded. But it was great talking to the management down there about how intentional they were. They've talked about taking people coming out of young offenders institution, trying to give them opportunities. And I said to them that if you want to get stuff like that done, we have a whole network of relationships in the cities that can help you do it. And I said, for example, Babasa's there's a conveyor belt of talent of people who would not only be looking for opportunity, but will make the most of any opportunity that comes, which is what they want. They want people with the drive to get stuff done. And so there's stuff that's still happening. But in terms of our leadership, and I say our because it's a collective act in the face of this pandemic and the uncertainty around Brexit, I think there are a couple of elements to it. One is technical, and the other is about emotion, isn't it? How we set the tone for the city. Because with so many things that are unpredictable, we have to find a way of building that sense of trust, because people will be inevitably in senses of turmoil so often. And I think one of the balancing acts I've been trying to find is, how do we tell the truth about the scale of the challenge coming upon us? I was on Ujima this morning, as I am every Thursday morning. This ain't going to be easy by any stretch, but without sounding hopeless within that as well. And I don't know what the art of that space is, but we're trying to be really frank about the scale of the challenge that we have to steel ourselves for in Bristol. We've tried to set a framework for understanding the very nature of this challenge as well since the beginning. It is a virus, a medical challenge. But having actually worked in Sally's team in public health before as well, we know that by far and away the biggest determinants of population health are social factors: unemployment, inequality, poverty, housing conditions, experiences in work. And those health consequences amass through life. They call it the life course of health. And if you've been broken down early years in your life, your resilience in the face of the next set of challenges is lower. And you can see that through the life course, your ability to overcome challenges disintegrates, because every challenge breaks you down. If we can flip that so that people can overcome challenges early years, then actually those challenges become the sources of strength to be able to take on more challenges as they come through life. And we are looking at the virus, but we're also looking at the social consequences of the lockdown and everything, the mental health, the unemployment, all that potentially could fundamentally undermine our resilience. As Mohammed just said, mental health is really taking a hit, and we will all know that from personal experience. So that is the nature of the challenge we're trying to take on. I do want to say there was a very useful article in the Lancet that talked about this not just being a pandemic, but calling it a syndemic. And a syndemic is the interaction between a communicable disease, the virus, and non-communicable health conditions, such as obesity and all those other things that come from social determinants. And it's actually understanding the interaction between the two through which we actually begin to chart a pathway out. Because it's those underlying inequalities in our society that the virus is really preying on, and having those disproportionate impacts, the unemployment, the overcrowded housing, the low wages. So we have that role to play in building up that resilience, irrespective of the virus, but will shore us up against future conflicts. Listen, you've heard so much about the ambition that is still alive in the city, and I'm a believer in ambition. I want compassion, and I want empathy, and I want all those things. But we do need the ambition to stay with us. Guy's been through the university and how just important that new campus is as a signal. We're still driving through on house building. We've taken a big hit from COVID and Brexit, but we got planning permission for 170 odd homes up in Bonington Walk in Lockleys the other day, 50% affordable, 55 council homes. We're still pressing through the amazing Bristol Housing Festival up in St George's Park with the Z-Pods, with YMCA, BEM Sylvie. Again, fantastic scheme for homeless young people. We're going for the outline business case for the mass transit system next year. We're pressing forward with Western Gateway as a wider economic region, and also the Temple Quarter development much more largely. But I just want to say, we don't just want to grow. We're not just in a dash for values-free growth. We need a growth that will make us more resilient to future shocks, because they are going to come, both physical, climate, but also with the potential for social shocks. But we also need to be acting in a way that reduces and minimizes the contribution we make to the likelihood of future shocks. And I think that is tied up in building an economy that is sustainable, decarbonized, pro-nature, and also inclusive. So we're not having wealth running off over the hill and leaving tens of thousands of people behind, wondering what stake they have in our society. For us, we're building it around the Sustainable Development Goals. How do we proactively deliver the SDGs, not just measure ourselves against them? And then we have the climate strategy, the ecological strategy, and the economic renewal plan that James has been in. Just finally, the role of business. Those soft relationships are massively important. I think we all recognise our interdependence, and creating the conditions for a stable society is good for business. As John Savage said, riots are not good for inward investment. And that's a quote I use a lot. I think it is fantastically profound. So we need to build that stable society. And I'm really pleased, if you don't mind me just making an introduction, that we have Dame Martina Milburn on the call with us as well. I was a personal beneficiary of the Prince's Trust on two really important occasions in my life journey, made a massive intervention for me. And I'm really pleased, at the prospect of having an even stronger relationship with the Prince's Trust in the future. It does amazing work. Can I give the floor to you for a bit, Dame Milburn?
Thank you very much, Mayor. And yes, just to say, we are increasingly concerned about what's happening with young people. I think there's three main areas. One is the disruption to education. And as I'm sure some of you are aware, our education attendance usually runs at about 95%. It's dropped by about 20% across the country, which isn't entirely explained by COVID. So there's a big issue coming down the tracks with school-age children. The decimation of the retail industry and the hospitality industry means a lot of young people who traditionally go into those areas as their first kind of experience of work. I myself was a checkout girl on a Saturday in Sainsbury's. That has gone. And then generally the unemployment situation, particularly for the most disadvantaged. So we've been working with the Mayor and with Stephen Peacock at the council to look at what more the Trust can do in Bristol. And Bristol is going to be a sort of pilot experiment. We've already had interest from Manchester and London to look at what we're doing here. And the kind of thing we're talking about is possible pop-ups at Temple Meads. We call it Get Hired. And how you introduce some of those young people that do not have the connections that we have to the world of work. We know there's growth industry in health and social care, logistics, transport, technology, digital, green technology especially. It's matching those with the young people. We work with a lot of local organisations, but we can't do it on our own. So over the coming year, we will be reaching out to all of you to look for work placements, work experience, mentors, and apprenticeships. So that's all I really need to say. And just to echo what the Mayor just said, if you need any proof that if we get it right, this works, just take a young Marvin Rees, now heading for a glorious political career, I'm sure. So thank you, and I look forward to working with you all over the coming months.
Thank you so much, Dame Martina. I'm genuinely excited by the work that you will be doing with our city in such a tangible way, and do look forward to working in partnership with you over the next years to come. Moving on then, I guess, before we head to questions for our speakers, I'd like to give just a couple of slots to individuals in the city. The first is Amy Kington, who runs a community of purpose, to give us a brief rundown of what's happening with the Bristol Young Hero Awards. Amy, over to you, quick.
Thank you, Jaya. So I'm Amy Kington. I'm the proud founder and chief exec of Community of Purpose, and we run the Bristol Young Heroes Awards. It's like the Pride of Britain, but full of young Bristolians that have overcome adversity to achieve great things. So they might have saved a life, they might have raised huge sums of money for charity, or they might have been a registered carer for a family member. The event this year is taking place online due to COVID-19, and I really want the business community to get behind these Bristolians, because they are incredible young people that genuinely do deserve to be celebrated and applauded by our city and our city leaders. So the event is taking place on the 16th of December. It's an evening affair, and you can register completely free of charge by visiting communityofpurpose.com. There's going to be some A-listers on there, so it's going to be a really fantastic celebration for those young people, but make sure you bring tissues because it's going to be heartwarming, but also quite emotional.
Brilliant. Thank you so much for that, Amy. I've loved your work. Keep doing it. And I hope anyone who is able to support can do. It certainly makes a huge difference to the lives of those young people who need recognition. Also now switching very quickly to Pete Gladwell from Legal and General. He's the head of public sector partnerships. Hopefully you can give us a very quick rundown of your plans and progress for Bristol. Pete.
Hi, yeah, thank you. Thanks for this opportunity. I mean, just to say it's been brilliant opportunity to listen to everything going on in the city. I'm calling in from London, but I hope you realise just the immense potential in what we've heard today, and particularly the presentation Guy Orpen gave. I mean, we do a lot of things all around the country with different cities, and genuinely what's going on in the Temple Quarter area is leading the country and quite potentially further more internationally in that respect. I think what we're trying to do with the Temple Island scheme is make sure that what's going on there and that success is multiplied for the benefit of Bristol, so and particularly is as inclusive as possible. So various people have seen iterations of that design, but for us the key values are that it provides housing, so that the great economic growth that I'm sure will come out of the university scheme and surrounding schemes can benefit people and affordable housing in particular, but also space for those startups and scale-ups that will come out of the university to grow and increase employment and benefit the city and make it as inclusive as possible. So exciting times, brilliant just to hear everything that's going on in the city, and look forward to working closely with you all going forward. Really happy to again address further questions, but I won't waste any more of your time.
Thank you so much, Pete. It's really good to hear those updates, and we look forward to hearing from you more over the course of 2021, which will be positive, and not just COVID positive. Now we do have a few questions. I'm hoping that I can go over to each of the questioners. John Bradford, you've got one first, CEO of DigiLocal, doing awesome work on tech and bridging the digital divide. John?
Oh, thank you, Jaya. So the question was, we've been working with companies and community groups to repurpose laptops to tackle some of the education exclusion that's taken place since COVID. And I guess my question to the audience, but also to the speakers, is what's the role of the public-private partnership in making equipment available to those disadvantaged young people? The charitable sector can do the repurposing, provide the content, the mentoring. There's a huge estate of IT within the private sector that could be repurposed for individuals. And then what's the role of the public sector in providing basic connectivity so that all of this content can be accessed by young people that don't necessarily have full fibre to the home?
Thanks, John. Who wants to take this one from our speaker panel? Just pipe up. I can't see anything, so.
Well, I can. No, James, you jump ahead.
Well, just to say, I think, John, thank you very much for that question. And I know there are a number of different conversations we've been having across different sectors as to, and I heard on a call in recent weeks that there are something like 10,000 young people who don't have access to both the kit, but also importantly, the connectivity around this. And I think at a time when what earlier speakers, Dame Martina and others have talked about the absolute importance of education and gaps in education, which I'm afraid have opened up this year, if people can't access the learning, is a serious issue. So I think I can't, not sure I can directly answer it, other than I think it's very much on the agenda. Marvin, would you like to comment any further?
Well, just to confirm that, I mean, connectivity across the city is that ongoing challenge. I'm just talking to the team now to find out the latest, because we know that it's not just about the hardware, it's about the opportunity, the ability to get online anyway. But this has been a challenge, has been with us for a long time. Even back in 2010, when I was at the Strategic Partnership, we were talking about the digital divide, but it's been certainly exposed for just how dangerous it is in the lives of so many people during COVID. We started meeting our school leads pre-lockdown as we started to look at a number of the challenges facing children not being in school. Initially, it was around hunger. It was particularly for those children for whom home was not the safest place. And it was also digital disconnect. And as a collection of schools and with our education needs, we were trying to think about how could we deal with that. Hunger was something we obviously came up quick on the traps with, but it was hard on the connectivity because we needed the hardware. Steve Chalk's been raising it a lot. We from Oasis schools who founded Oasis, so every week this is an issue. Look, we've got the city office. If we can log in, I think it could be good for us to link in through Alison Hurley, our Director of Education. Then we can have a conversation with the schools and make sure, particularly when I'm thinking about school children, that whatever is collected is directed towards those children who most need it. If we can log that in, because it can follow the food as well in the identification of those families who are most in hunger. So there are channels about where we can make that connection. In fact, I'd say it's often the conversation with business. If business say they want to do something, we have this phenomenal network of community development workers and voluntary sector organisations that can make the connection and connections with the people who need it most. So it's an open door. It'd be great to hear more.
Thank you. Are there any other responses from our panel of speakers, or shall I move on to the next question? I'll move on to the next question. I know that there is a question coming from David Mace. David, are you around to be able to ask your question? No, the question that I've got here.
I am actually. Sorry, I'm back. Sorry.
That's okay.
Actually, I must admit, I didn't know today's agenda, and I think the point I was trying to make is probably less relevant to the discussions we've just had. So it does come across as a little bit of a moan and groan a bit. But the point I was making was the business rates regime and the impact that's having, particularly on the retail, leisure and hospitality sectors. And I wasn't entirely sure what Business West and Bristol City Council and others are doing to make representations to the government about the potential changes under the call for evidence. So I really, it's sort of a fairly heartfelt call, because I think having been involved in that particular sector, we're getting to the ridiculous position where we're seeing some of the retailers in particular and leisure operators actually paying more in business rates than they are in rents. So anyway, it was just that point, but please pass on to other things, because they're probably of far more importance and interest to others.
Thank you. Yeah.
I think Matt Griffiths is able to comment on our behalf. Yeah.
Yeah. Can everyone hear me? Yeah, it's probably worth having an offline conversation, actually. We submitted a consultation response to the Treasury's review on business rates, which closed, which I'm sure you're aware of, Dave. and did call for fundamental review and did flag real discrepancy between physical online tax and wanted that resolved. We're waiting to see what the Treasury response is to that. When we had a private meeting with them in October, they were very wedded to the idea of retaining some kind of property-based business tax. So we'll just have to see, but I'm very happy to have a private discussion with you on that.
Yeah, fine, thank you.
Can I just say from us, just getting a bit of support from my team here, that we could look at sharing, James, Matt, for distribution under your guidance, the submission we made, or elements of the submission we made to the government's call for evidence as well. But as Matt said, looking at moving towards some kind of land-based tax. What I would also share in terms of supporting business, our communication with government about the amount of financial support that's needed is not just based on meeting Bristol City Council's budget needs. We've made our case based on what we need to be able to support business and to have some discretion in how we support business rather than just the national formula as well. We're facing a bit of shortfall on that, as you might imagine, but we are trying to make sure that's always on our radar.
Thank you.
Thanks for that, Marvin. I have a question for Dame Martina, actually. Dame Martina, I would like to know what you see, or what you'd like to see in the city for young people. And in your experience, what has worked well in other cities? What could work for us?
Well, the Trust has been in Bristol for 30 years, so we've worked with a lot of young people. I think it's easier to answer that with a negative about what doesn't work. And I've sat with so many business leaders who have said, you know, we went down to the local job centre, we offered jobs to young people who we wouldn't normally have taken, and it's been an unmitigated disaster. The bit that those young people need is the additional support, the kind of support that local community groups give, that the Trust give, in order for those apprenticeships, work experience, whatever you like to mention, works. So what you need, and if you want to scale it up, which we hope you do, is real partnerships between the businesses and the community sectors that are supporting those young people. And I'll give you one really small example. We've had a very, very long partnership with Marks and Spencer's, and we had one young girl who was doing particularly well. 2 years she'd been with them. She suddenly started turning up late to work, and nobody could understand why. She refused to tell anybody. It turned out, because she was able to tell somebody at the Trust, her mentor at the Trust, her mother had gone back to prison and she was having to do the school run with her younger siblings, and she was too ashamed to tell anybody in the workplace. We got it sorted. She's now actually, 3 years later, an assistant store manager for one of their big stores. So that was kind of what I was saying about getting it right. It has to be support, and it has to be a genuine partnership. In my experience, business on their own tends to get it wrong, and the voluntary sector working on its own gets it wrong because they don't understand the needs of business. So if you put the two together, it can be a really win-win situation.
Thank you so much. So if there was a specific ask for businesses, what action can they do today in order to help address such issues?
I would say find a strong voluntary sector partner that works with young people, but also understands it from the business side, and then work it out between you. So in fact, it was an idea of the Prince of Wales, a programme we've been running for 20 years called Get Into, where we start with the needs of the business before we go and find the young people and put the two together. So I would say work in genuine partnership with somebody that understands young people.
Yes, definitely. And starting from the needs of business makes it much more sustainable. You can't run on empty. You need to know what the needs are. Guy, you have a question. Did you want to pick up?
It was a comment, and thank Dame Martina for a very thoughtful and helpful set of advice there. Just to flag that when we come to the campus, of course, we will be commissioning contractors to employ local people, to be thoughtful about the way they work on site. But it's also an opportunity for us to reset our relationship with future employees of the University of Bristol. And we haven't been as good as we would wish to be at welcoming the diverse communities that we have in Bristol into our university. So we will be doing proactive things, very similar to those that Dame Martina outlined, but also including the effort to give potential employees some experience of what it would be like to work in the university, taster sessions, if you will, and not just doing those taster sessions in our lovely but somewhat intimidating buildings in Clifton, with loads of wood paneling and all that good stuff, but actually going out to other venues and reaching out to make sure that we do attract the much wider range of talent that there is in the city to come and work for us than we've historically managed. It's a challenge, but one we greatly welcome taking on. Join Us will be the name of the initiative when you see it live.
Thanks for that, Guy. Or a question for Marvin, actually, in the context of knowing that the One City plan, the One City economic strategy is going to be refreshed. What are the plans for economic recovery next year, the priorities, and how can business help? Are there calls to action there too?
If I can just start by saying the point of the plan is that it's written by the city, so there's many and from yourselves, so there's many insights that need to happen. I think when we first started talking about leaning into this, and James and Craig started to chair the economic board weekly, we talked about survival, if I'm very brilliant about it, and actually been on the calls last night. I was on another call last night with Excluded UK, along with Andy Burnham, Steve Rotherham, Andy Street, Jamie Driscoll from up north, Sadiq Khan was on that call. We had businesses from right across the UK speaking, and the week before we had Bristol businesses. It was simply about staying alive. And then we talked about how can we begin to offer people certainty, and from our part that means that we do the job of channeling the money as quickly as possible out into businesses. And I'll say that Denise and the team did an incredible job, I think, getting the money out the door as it landed. We just like everyone else, we listened for the press conference. We get the latest policy or funding back, and then we got to work out overnight what it means and get it out. And they did an incredible job getting that money out, one of the top performers in the country. Survival is the first point. But what we want to do early doors, as I said, is make sure that the kind of economic recovery we get is right. We can't just patch amend what we had before, stick it back on, push it back in the ring, expecting to get out there, because it's not work. There's some fundamental weaknesses that have been exposed by COVID, and possibly going to be tested even more by Brexit, whatever shape that takes. And so we have to be clear, I think, as a collective in the city about what we want our economic development to look like. For our part, if I can just say, I just texted Sir Ed Lister again this morning, just to try and make sure that our case is being heard. We need government to front load its investment in our green infrastructure. I think, one is it drives money, it drives jobs, but also it decarbonises the systems that will kick into play once the economy begins picking up again. And as Dame Martina was saying as well, we have to be very intentional about building those soft relationships so that when the economy does pick up, it's inclusive. I have a very deep fear that the underlying drivers of this current period of time will be to compounding inequalities. The people who are most marginal to economic opportunity are going to be hit first and hardest, and then they will be least well placed to benefit from not just the support packages, but the uptick when it comes. So we're going to have to be very intentional, about having an inclusive recovery.
Thanks for that response, Marvin. I know that Jack Callow, the president of the Junior Chamber, is in the house. If that's the case, Jack, are you able to give us a report on a quick report or response on how younger professionals in the city are coping and what their activity has been? Sorry to spring it on you.
Thanks, Jay. Yeah, no, nothing like 30 seconds notice. Absolute pleasure to do so. Pleasure to be here as well. We're lovely to receive the invitation to be a part of this. As was our BJC membership. Would also echo the positivity that was promised in this initiative discussion meeting, and that has very much come across. It's really brilliant to hear and to be a part of. Role of president as the Bristol Junior Chamber has been an incredibly interesting journey over the last few months. Jay, yourself joined us to be a guest speaker, which we very much appreciated. it's just been fascinating to see how people have reacted, but have come together. It's been an absolute privilege to sort of lead that organisation. We had a wine tasting last Thursday, which, as you might imagine, saw our highest numbers come out and join us in for that. But we are staying strong. People are coming together. People are sharing their stories, and people are finding solutions together. And it's very much coming to a stage now where, dare I say it, we've all had enough. We know we've all had enough, and people are now sort of really pushing to get back to business and get back to growth and pushing things forward, which again is a real treat for me to be able to see and help facilitate. So strong positive messages is what I'd like to feed back, and we've got such talent in the city and such a great collective young professional scene that will take on the challenges that we all have discussed here today. And for me, the future, if I'm allowed to say it, the future is very bright. So yeah, another positive note is what I'd like to share.
Words of positivity always welcome, especially when they're coming from the heart rather than just lip service. And I know that we have genuine reason to be positive here in the city region. I also know that Marty Reed is in the room, head of Engine Shed. And Marty, are you able to give us an idea of how the tech sector is being resilient against COVID, and whether or not the co-working space aspect of it has remained difficult, or if there's hope on the horizon?
Sure. Hi, everyone. I guess there are two parallel things. I guess the co-working space and sector, like all flexible space provision, it's still going through a challenging time. We did some great work early in the year around the first lockdown with Business West, and particularly Matt Griffith, on highlighting some of the gaps in support, which led to some good moves. We've actually, as things have gone on, we found that the need for bringing people together and work in flexible spaces is still something that people need. And actually there's a bit of resilience in the demand for those who are adapting their business models and being flexible. The number of business founders from small and large companies have said through the first few months of lockdown, there was an energy, a drive to change and crack on together. But then as time has gone on, the lack of the social engagement, that social capital, and the lift and creativity and drive that it gives people is really starting to struggle with. So we've seen more and more demand for people coming back together. So I think there is an optimism that there is a good and strong way out of this. I think the business model is just going to be a bit challenged in the near term. In the tech sector, it's been an incredibly mixed bag, even by, compared to other sectors. Some naturally, the digital business models are actually a better fit or are very easy to be adapted to work during COVID. I think an ongoing challenge has been the capital investment and funding that the tech and startup sector needs to sustain itself has been a challenge. But I think overall, there's a positivity that in the city, there's an incredibly collective and collaborative approach to get this working. A lot of the tech startups and companies that we're working with and have supporting are really excited about the opportunity of some of the new programs that Guy outlined to attract and work together to bring investment into the city, to investment into our companies. And that collaborative approach, I think, is going to put us in a really good stead going forwards.
Thank you very much, Marty. I think, given that, unless there are any other questions, please pipe up. But otherwise, I will attempt to sum up and give us a chance to do some proper networking. So it's been a totally packed meeting. I've learned so much. We obviously have found out about what 2021 can have in store for us from James on clean growth, tackling deprivation, mobility and connectivity, education and skills, all the things we should be pushing on and have been pushing on and continue to do so regardless of what else is happening. Sally Hogg has been awesome giving us that update on COVID-19, and I said before and meant it that we need that kind of practical advice and continued focus on getting through it rather than just looking at the horrors of the numbers. And I know there's a third wave due in January, but we will ride it. Guy, for your last meeting report, thank you so much for leaving us with so much hope on the Temple Quarter Enterprise Campus. As I said, hopefully we'll be able to have a stronger relationship with our next University of Bristol representative on the initiative board, but we will miss you, so don't go away, don't you dare. Mohammed, I have loved your briefing because it gives me hope, and I hope that it has given everyone else hope about the young people and the energy that we have within the city to be able to take things forward no matter what. It's always a pleasure to hear from Marvin on what's happening with the city region. I know it's about being really painfully honest and pragmatic about what we can do next. We know it's not going to be easy. We hope that we continue to work in partnership as business, as the business community, to be able to really do something that matters. And of course, Dame Martina, thank you so much for coming to join us today to talk to us about what's been happening with the Prince's Trust, but also what you will be doing with us, and the nature of true partnership, which gives me hope. Having seen lots of partnerships fail because they were never based on anything real, we know that this will be real going forward, and we as a business community really will be taking part in something that is much bigger than us. I've rambled on a bit too long probably, but I do hope that you will stay, all of you, as many of you as possible, for the networking afterwards. It's not quite the same, obviously. We don't have, oh, James, you're waving. Did you want to say something?
Yeah, can I just say, well, thank you to Jaya. I think just wanted to, there's a slide which hopefully people can see, just to point to the fact we got our next gathering, larger gathering on the 14th of January. We are sticking to this slot. We're moving it slightly so we don't do it in the first week of January, but we're aiming to run those monthly through next year. Clearly, we're all waiting to see absolutely as to how things pan out for and how we therefore we will best meet. Interesting that 2 days ago we were supposed to be meeting if we'd gone back to our program pre-March at Ashton Gate Stadium, which clearly has been used for other reasons at the moment. But actually, let's hope that we are able to come together. I'm sure we'd all welcome the chance to see each other, get that opportunity to just chat and network. We are going to in a few moments go to do that through the rooms, which does work, but it's not quite as good as actually seeing each other. Jay, can I just thank you for chairing today, and thank again everybody for being part of this discussion, and you know, I think it demonstrates what we've got. I think, in the words of, dare I say it, Ian Dury, despite the challenges, there are reasons to be cheerful, I have to say, and to look optimistically. Bristol and the city region is in great shape in lots of different ways, and we have an opportunity to move forward. Jay, I'll just pass back you to just finally close, if that's all right.
Okay, well, there's not much more for me to say other than you have to bring your own nibbles for this. So hopefully you've got, I don't know, a cup of coffee. It's a bit early for gin, but hopefully see you in the networking afterwards. Thank you very much for attending. Happy Christmas.